Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder here on YesShift.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And we brought with us a guest for their very first hazing, Billy Sherwood. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. Where'd you go? I've got this sign in the front of me that says this meeting is being recorded by a host. How do I get rid of that so we can enjoy it?
Oh, I don't know, but we can see you. You're good.
Okay.
There might be something to click, but we're good. We can see you.
Okay.
And if you need to futz around with that to get rid of it to see us, that's totally cool. Steve and I will kind of get us rolling here. First of all, thanks for taking time. We're very happy to have you. As you know, you and I have known each other, wow, since we were in our early 30s, and now we're senior citizens. How'd that happen? I think there's a Yes song about that somewhere.
I'm flying by, isn't it?
Yeah, and folks, if you're listening, just let us know how we sound and feel free to chime in with anything that we discuss in this interview.
Yeah, answer questions and comment on things that we touch on. I'm going to let Steve open the questioning with some really cool stuff related to what you might be up to now.
Yeah, so you've been very busy lately, and what I was curious about, because I've seen all the like different pictures and whatnot, is well, first off, how was Rozfest recently? How's the overall vibe there?
Oh, it was a blast to get out there and play. That's the first gig I played since August or whatever it was. We stopped in 2019.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of a selfish endeavor because I just wanted to go out and play. So I kind of tagged along with Dave Kersner's All-Star Band, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Amazing musicians, and kind of snuck onto the boat. You know, I was the only Yes member on the thing.
The stowaway.
Exactly. I kind of felt more like a tourist than an artist on that one. But it was a lot of fun, and to see everybody again, especially, you know, for the most part, mask free and just living the life again. It was just joyful and a great experience.
Fresh ocean air that you could breathe without smelling fabric in front of it.
I get your question was about Rozfest, which is where that started.
Oh, I was thinking of the cruise. Yeah, we'll get to that.
I did Rozfest with Dave, and you know, when it was done, I said to him, "Man, I just wrote charts out for 20 of your songs, and I played for about an hour and 30. I'm coming with you on the cruise."
Yeah, for sure. You put that much work into it.
So yeah, Rozfest was amazing. Great to see all those people from Rozfest who I've known for a long time because Circa headlined Rozfest back in the day. I think it was 2006, and apparently the legend is the bass is still echoing through the valley.
Oh, great.
So it was great to see everybody again and do that. And then, of course, as I said, you know, Cruise to the Edge. It was just, you know, it felt like we're back here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, back on Earth, right? As we know it.
Back to reality and people playing and interacting and shaking hands. And, you know, for a while we were told we're not going to shake hands anymore. You know, it's like, yeah. So we're sort of back to where we are. I mean, we're obviously all in recovery mode from what just happened. Everyone in their individual lives, you know, paid a bit of a price in their way.
Yeah.
You know, in so many ways with health and whatnot, but also economically and just emotionally and you know, artistically and spiritually, all that stuff tied together of just being boxed in and not free to do what we want to do, you know?
Definitely.
So, really good.
And we got a testimonial already in the comments. Christina Bourbano Jeffrey says you guys sounded great at Rozfest. So that's great.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
It was funny because, as you know, Dave Kersner is also in my band Arc of Life that we have. Yeah. And so at rehearsals, you know, I came in with very little time and got my charts together and was reading. Dave was, you know, pretty brutal taskmaster at times, you know, and when the rehearsals is done, I said, "Oh, I can't wait to get you into an Arc of Life rehearsal, man."
Payback
about that. So yeah, it was fun. It was good.
Oh, Christina's the violinist for Low Bait Scarp. I thought the name sounded familiar. We are huge fans of Low Bait Scarp. We had Adam on. We played a clip of you doing vocals with Adam in the studio. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, Christina.
Yeah, that was a fun project, and Adam's been a friend of mine for many years, you know, and so of course when he asked me to do it, it was like, yeah, man, I'm in. So it was fun. I'm proud. It took him a while to get it going.
Yeah, great. Steve?
Yeah, speaking of Arc of Life, I was wondering like how things are going with that, because like, are you working on a new album, and are there potential touring plans with that sometime in the future?
Well, just as Arc of Life came out, the COVID thing was kicking into high, right. And so everything was wiped out. So unfortunately, unfortunately, we had plans to go out and play live, but they just got crashed, you know. And now that we're at this point, and Yes is re-entering the equation here, and I'm also, you know, going to be playing with Asia soon here too. It's all about getting the schedule together where we can make that point of entry to go out and do gigs at the right time. So that's the sort of idea for the live front of Arc of Life. We all want to get it going and get playing and perform with that band. But in the meantime, we've actually made a new record, and I literally just finished it and had it mastered by Moore Applebaum.
Oh, he's great.
Oh, wow.
Just about, you know, maybe whatever it was, 3 weeks ago now. So now I'm just working on cover art and getting all the sort of stuff together with Frontiers Records to get it ready to come out. When they put it out, I don't know, but you know, it's a really cool record. The first record, you know, admittedly is a little bit more straight ahead in places and a little more, you know, not that it's a bad word, but kind of commercial.
Yeah,
And
that's not bad.
as the record starts, it starts that way, and then it evolves into a sort of more progressive feeling thing by the end. And this is almost like a relay race now, where we took that baton, and now we've just gone farther, faster with it. And so it's much more progressive on this one. The last track's 17 minutes long. It's actually called Arc of Life, the last track.
How'd you come up with that name?
Well, it's the first track that John and I wrote for this when we were just writing for fun.
Oh,
We kept writing this song and kept writing and writing, and eventually it was like 17 minutes long. So when it came time to sort of put together the first record, I played music for Frontiers, and that was one of the songs. And they kind of were like, well, this is really cool, but we kind of were looking for more of a straight ahead kind of record here for the debut. So that song just kind of went on ice for a minute, but has since now resurfaced and been flushed out and developed and just sounds killer and is
that's great.
It's the right evolution for the band at the right time, I think, you know.
Oh, well, that's great. You know, you mentioned a word that reminds me of a question I was thinking about earlier today. I wanted to ask you. You used the word commercial, and that's not always a bad thing, however, it has always related in the past to equating with radio airplay, accessibility, that kind of thing. In 2020, whatever we're in, how important is radio airplay for a band now, Billy, being that you can promote yourselves online? So I never listen, me personally, I never listen to music on the radio anymore. It's all YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's, you know, I get CDs sent to me. How important is radio airplay and that kind of accessibility? Is it a factor?
I think, you know, any and all media and music getting out there in front of more and more people is a huge factor. Okay. It's changed in how it all works now, as we all know. It used to be radio and sitting around your radio and checking out new material as the DJ told you what was coming, and you were excited to hear it next week's coming, the new Zeppelin or whatever the case is. But now it's, you know, we live in a world of where, you know, people are getting their entertainment on TikTok in 5-second chunks. So the patience level of things have changed immensely. So I think people have branched off into their corners, and those who appreciate music, you know, as art, still are looking for and yearning for that kind of, you know, 50 minutes of music that takes their mind away from the troubles of the world and brings them to another place.
Yeah, and so, weirdos like Stephen and I love the physical product still. You know, we love to open it, read through it, play with it, smell that new album smell, even though it's, you know, yeah. I'm still so old school when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's the way a lot of people feel, and that's the core of what's really supporting that whole thing in music now. The top layer of that is commercial success in terms of like modern music, what are hits and whatnot, and that's still a huge factor. And the radio is massively important for that. There's other ways that you break through in terms of maybe you have a song in a film that's huge, and all of a sudden everybody reacts to that, or you get a song in Grand Theft Auto 5 and people identify
yeah,
from very, very different sources. But, you know, I'm well aware of the type of musician and the type of genre that I'm in, and I'm in a niche sort of lane. You know, you could say that there's prog rock, there's jazz, there's fusion, there's, you know, soundscapes. There's this whole subgenre of music where when it branches out, the commerciality, if you will, of needing radio play is kind of irrelevant because the fans are already there and following it and in it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So for us, it's not as mission critical as it might be for a new band trying to break, where radio would certainly help. You know what I mean? Right. It's kind of all relative to where you are on the ladder of your journey musically, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You know, before we continue on with some other things that are happening now and in the future, let's talk about you and your personal musical journey, and where it ends up is not only the things you just mentioned that you're working on, but along that way more recently in the last 20 whatever years, You've worn more hats and have played more roles than any other cosmonaut in the Yes universe. You've played guitar, you've played bass, you sing, you've written, you've mixed, you do all these different things. So starting from, when I say starting from the beginning, you don't have to give us a week by week play, but you grew up in a musical family. You started with drums. How did all this sort of evolve, and what did you gravitate towards instrumentally? I know your musical influences, and feel free to chime in on that too, but kind of give us a bit of that evolution.
The sort of shortest version I can give you of the timeline and chronological sort of journey of how it evolved was, my first memories of sitting underneath my dad's white grand piano in the living room while his Dixieland jazz band was rehearsing and my mom was playing drums. And when they'd take a break, I would walk over to the drum kit and she would sit there and go, 2 and 4 on the hat and roundhouse on the ride, make sure your snare's solid. So I started playing drums, because she kind of inspired me to do that. And so once I kind of had the ability to play, pardon me, I got this weird hair going on. Once I had the ability to play and kind of hold time together, all of a sudden I took it a little more seriously and started really thinking about, well, maybe I do want to be a musician and I do want to go for this. So I started playing. My first band was a little punk band that I had, and then I moved to Los Angeles where my brother's band Logic had moved to, and we're without a bass player for a minute. Hang on a minute, this hair is driving me nuts. Sorry.
It's okay.
They had a bass player who had bailed out, and at that point Jimmy Hahn, who's a lifelong friend of mine, we were all living in a band house here in LA, 6 people in this tiny little place. And Jimmy says to me, why don't you buy a bass, man? Start playing bass. You've got the drum thing down, but it's really loud, and no one in the band wants you to be playing drums in the afternoon because they're all asleep, and then they're giving you grief. Buy a bass you can play in headphones and get, still do it. So at that point, I kind of had my drums. I got a bass and I started jamming with Yes Records pretty intensely, and Weather Report and Emerson Lake Palmer. And Jim was a big part of my education, helping me to get going on that level. Once I had a kind of a grip on it, wasn't long after that Logic, I had actually introduced them to another bass player, this guy Jim Zealand, who was a friend of mine in school, and he was a real solid bass player. I didn't have the confidence that I was the guy yet. So Jim was in the band. It didn't really work out with the guys, so they're back to having no bass player. And it's at that point that they all looked at me and said, just play bass. Let's go. So I jumped into Logic, and that's when we started getting really serious about things. And the guys in Toto stepped into a rehearsal, heard our band Logic, and waltzed us into A&M Records and got us a great record deal. So they had just done Toto 4 with Rosanna in Africa. They had carte blanche in LA.
Wow.
So those guys produced Steve Porcaro, David Page, Greg Ladani, produced the Logic record. And we thought, especially at a very young age, I think I was like 18 or 19. I literally was, just out of high school, or what I was going to high school when I was going to high school.
Yeah.
So we make a Logic album, and of course we're all buying Maseratis and Porsches in our mind. But as the business teaches you, if you're in it long enough, man, it's like there's ups, there's downs, there's highs, there's lows. So from the high of getting that band signed and making a great record and feeling really good came the downside, which was we lost our record deal, and the label regime changed, and the president was no more, and this guy moved, and our A&R guy was gone. And, those things happen, and so Logic ended, and I wasn't sure what I was doing, and I ran into an old friend of mine, Bruce Gowdy, who's a great guitar player, songwriter, and he says to me, let's write some songs, just try to get a publishing deal, forget the record company band thing, let's just write some. So we wrote 4 songs. Those 4 songs were the Revolution song, The Moment Is Here, Can't Let You Go, and Fight to Win. Those 4 songs, we shopped around Los Angeles and everyone passed. I mean, we were hell bent that it was gonna work. So let's just keep taking meetings. So we took meetings everywhere, and everyone passed until we went to a key figure in our career, both Bruce and mine. Sherry Saba was a A&R sort of rep or Warner Chappell at the time publishers. Friend of Bruce. Bruce said, "Hey, Sherry, you should hear this music. It's kind of cool." Sherry heard it and flipped out.
Really?
So Sherry it to her boss, Mike Sandoval, who was the president of Warner Chappell at the time here in LA. And we took a meeting at the 9000 building on Sunset. So we're at the top floor in Warner Chappell, and Bruce and I are looking going, hey, they not only did they not pass, but like they invited us down here. Something good must be coming.
Yeah.
And literally it was like a scene from a movie, because Mike Sandoval, who's a super nice guy, and he kicks in the Revolution song, and he literally gets up on his chair and starts just rocking.
Wow.
And I'm looking going, whoa, what's going on here? So long story short, start there. We got a very, very large publishing deal.
So let me ask, if I could jump in. There's a huge twist in the story of events here. Did the others who passed ever say why they passed? And was it clear with Sandoval why it resonated with him?
Too progressive.
Oh.
At the time, we were
How progressive was it? Was it Sound Chaser or was it Owner of a Lonely Heart?
You know those songs. You know the Revolution song and the words. They leaned into a Yes feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the other thing that was odd for me, my whole journey leading up to Yes, is every band I was in, everyone said you should be in Yes. I mean, David Page from Toto, when we were tracking bass on Logic, said, "Dude, you should be in Yes." I'm like, "Well, no, Chris Fire's got that gig."
It was kind of taken for a while, yeah.
But
was this like 84-ish, 85?
Yes, Logic was 83 to like 85, 86. Then we broke up. World Trade started 86, 87, 88, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So back to the 4 songs get signed as just publishing. There's no record deal there. But the publishing deal was so big for the time that it sparked the interest of every label. They're like, well, what's going on? You guys gave that much money to these 2 guys for those 4 songs. We want to hear them. So now all of a sudden we've got labels saying, wow, we want to sign you. So now we have to do showcases. So we set up and we start playing for this label and that label and this one and that one. And we get through the entire situation until the very last showcase, where a guy walks in who I had no idea that he was where he was, because I wasn't that tuned into the business and who the hierarchy and the power players were. I was just a bass player. And so Derek Shulman walks into the room. And
wow. Gentle Giant?
What's the singer of Gentle Giant doing here? Lo and behold, he's a huge power player at Polydor.
Oh, wow. That's right.
Bon Jovi and all these guys. And he heard World Trade and said, I'm taking it. And that's where my relationship with Derek started.
Oh, wow.
So we got signed to Polydor for a very, very large record deal. And we thought we were going to be taking that to the next level. And actually we were for a while in direct competition with ABWH, who was on Arista at the time, and Trevor Rabin's solo album, which had just come out. Right. Can't Look Away. And I get record reports that were like them on top and us on the bottom. And then next week we were closer. And then we got above them. I was like, wow, I mean, these are my heroes and we're above them. Something good is happening here.
Yeah.
Just around that time, Derek calls me and says, I'm leaving Polydor. I'm going to become the president of Atco Records. So he leaves Polydor, which essentially is, again, another version of what I told you about Logic, regime change.
Yeah.
Whenever regime change, everything shifts, and you're either lucky if you survive or you're one of the ones who get booted. So I was young and kind of naive and didn't believe the end was as near as Derek was telling me it was at Polydor. I was like, no, man, we're cooking, the band's smoking. At that time is where he introduced me to Squire, who had heard the demos for World Trade. And Derek said, World Trade's pretty much done over there at Polydor, and this guy could be the lead singer of Yes, you should meet this guy. So Chris and I met, and that's where our relationship started. And we started writing material. World Trade was still in existence over on Polydor. And as that was happening, Chris said to me, you're going to be the lead singer of Yes. And I keep saying, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? And he, no, man, this is a good thing. We're going to do this. I'm like, no. I'm into working with you and writing songs, but I have my band World Trade. You know what I mean? And Derek would call me and go, dude, your band they're going to drop you. Trust me. I'm like, no, Derek, I've talked to Dick Asher. It's good. You know, we're still in. So I'm sort of naively hanging on to the dream, if you will. And the whole time, the lawyers, the agents, the managers, this is a great idea. Billy Sherwood's going to be the lead singer of Yes. Everyone thought it was a great idea. Except I never wanted to do it, and I didn't do it.
So just so you know, I got to interject something. As you're telling this, I remember being at Alan White's house, who you remember where he lived in West Hills, and I grew up on the street behind his street. Okay, and so I would go to my parents. I found out he was living there. I went there, introduced myself. We became friends. I remember being at his house saying, "Have you ever heard of World Trade?" And I said, "No." And he pulled out the album and he pointed to your picture and he said, "It looks like this guy's going to be working with us. Let me put this on." And he put it on and played it for me. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. So I was kind of like on the sidelines watching all that unfold. And I'd see him like once a week, once every couple of weeks, and he'd kind of update me. And it was really interesting. And it's interesting hearing it from you now.
Right. Well, at that time when it was, let's say, reaching its pinnacle point where the pressure was intense on me, that they wanted me to jump in and join, you know, it's funny because I had an extremely long and great relationship with Chris. There were a few periods like family, like brothers, where you don't talk to each other for a little while because things get hairy and you got to sort it out. Yeah. This was one moments because I told Chris, I'm like, look, I know everyone thinks I'm going to do this, Chris, but I'm telling you, I'm not. So when you call me, don't talk about this with me. It's not going to happen. Let's just table it. Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Chris in his jovial manner. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay. So he calls me the next day. What's up? I'm like, just working. What are you up to? This is going to be so great. And I'm like, no, Chris, you don't understand. I'm not doing it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Seriously. And he calls me the next time and I said to him, Chris, I love you and I love our relationship here and how it's developing and we're writing and we're friends and everything. But I swear to God, if you mention this to me again, I'm going to change my phone number. And he laughed really hard like he did. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, okay, talk to you tomorrow. Calls me the next day and says, hey man, how you doing? I said, good. What are you up to? He goes, this is going to be great. I said, what's that? He goes, you joining Yes. I said, that's it. I hung up the phone. I changed my phone number. The only time in the history of me owning phones, which is a long time now. Yeah. And I actually changed my number because of Chris. And, we laughed about it.
Sure.
After. But the reality was I knew I had the instinct that ABWH, because I'm a Yes fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? ABWH is over there. These guys are over here. There's nothing but money being thrown around from these labels and managers are thinking about huge tours. If I get in there and I do what I was offered to do in about T-minus 6 months, it's all over and they're going to put this thing back together and they're going to do this reunion. I could see them on the wall. Excuse me. And quite frankly, I wasn't going to step in front of that train.
Yeah, I get that.
I felt that between logic and learning and then world trade and learning, I was starting to figure out the business and I could navigate it and go get another record deal doing something else. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to do my own thing. So fast forward, whatever it was, 6 months, Chris sends me a message through my roommate at the time, who was an engineer friend of mine, Tom Fletcher, who we did tons of work together. And Tom comes into the living room.
What did it say? This is going to be, Chris says this is going to be great.
No, he says, Billy, Chris just texted me because they, are called. They had been friends and too by proxy, Yeah. Chris just called me, man, and he doesn't want to talk about you being the lead singer, but he doesn't want to talk to you and just say hello. Now, by then, I could see where the cards were on the table. So
had they at that point, was it you changing your number that made them go after Roger Hodgson for 20 minutes?
No, that was actually with me.
Okay.
I was kind of the last one in the chain.
Okay, because I remember them going to Phoenix and rehearsing with him, and I remember that. So now I have the time context again. Okay.
The last one in the chain, because right after that, and I stopped talking to Chris. The next thing I knew, all of a sudden, Chris, through Tom, wants to speak to me. So he calls me and we speak, and he explains to me exactly what I had predicted and told him was going to happen, which was ABWH and Yes West, as they call it, are going to merge, and they're going to make a record together as the Super Yes. Right. And I was like, of course you are.
Yeah. Duh, like you didn't know that?
So what else is up? You know what I mean? And he says, well, the thing is, the songs we wrote are kind of in the loop now. And I said, well, which ones? And he said, well, The More We Live. The band really likes The More We Live, and they want to take it to the next level. So would you mind coming into the studio and working with us and getting it going with us here? So I did. I went down to Cherokee and I worked and recorded, stuff with TK was there and Alan, and of course, Chris, Eddie Offord, and myself. That's who the team that was working on it. And it was a very funny thing when we were working on The More We Live. I hadn't thought about this in a while, but I had recorded the bass, which is a very simple bass part. You know what I mean? It's not like Silent Wings of Freedom. It's really straight ahead. So when we're in the studio with Eddie says to Chris one day, so Fishy, you need to replay this bass. And Chris says, oh, I kind of like what he did there. You know what I mean? Let's leave it for now. Don't worry about it. A couple days later, Fishy, you've got to replay this bass. Chris goes, man, I really like what he did. Just let's leave it. And then again, the next day, Fishy, you got to keep fishying him. And Chris finally says, Eddie, we're going to leave the bass Billy play. And
did Chris decide to change his number to stop hearing that from Eddie? Is that what happened?
So Eddie wouldn't call him.
I'm more patient, I did. So we ended up leaving that bass on there, but it was just very funny, those those exchanges because I am sitting on the couch, like relatively a newbie into the Yes community. And I'm watching the producer of several of my favorite records ever telling the bass player who I worship to play it, and he don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it was just a very surreal situation.
Yeah.
And then of course they brought, you know, John Anderson in to record, and the vibes were not great. It's no mystery that period is with tumultuous, you know, things. And I'll never forget, they're sitting in there with me in the control room, and they said, John's coming in today. I said, great, we'll put this vocal down. You know, I'm kind of a newbie. It's great, let's go. And they said, well, you're going to do it. I said, cool, well, you'll be here so we can, you know, make sure everything's good. No. I said, what do you mean, no? And, well, we're not going to be here. It's just going to be you. I'm like, well, you guys should hang. It's no. So about half an hour before John got there, they all got up and split.
Why?
Vibes, man. You know,
it's okay.
I'm waiting in the room, and John comes in, and we get the job done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's a great song, by the way. It's a beautiful song. It's got so much depth. It's great. It really is.
You know, I'm proud of that song for multiple reasons. The first one, and the most important thing to my heart about that song, is it's the first song I ever wrote with Chris.
Right.
And the lyrics were so positive, and the idea of the song and what it meant, and just, you know, the chordal structure, how it worked. It was just, for me, it was the perfect point of entry with Chris, you know.
Yeah, and you did it again with Conspiracy, right? Do I remember that correctly? You did it again with Conspiracy?
Yeah, well, we put the demo of it on Conspiracy. That's where we started.
Yeah.
It was very close to what we ended up with, you know, outside of a couple additions of some other Yes guys. But proud that song was the first point of entry, because when you're writing songs with people, it's a real personal thing.
Yeah.
And there's either something going on or there isn't. And sometimes even when there is something going on, you write a song and you're like, okay, that's a cool song. But sometimes, you know, Chris and I both knew there's something unique about what we just did. And that concept for both of us was why we wanted to pursue this writing thing together and see what else we could do. And along the way, we've written some very amazing pieces, if you ask me. I mean, when I listen to Days of Wonder, you know, it kind of gets me, because Chris sounds so amazing on there, and his chord structures. And then, you know, there's a lot there I'm glad we did at the end of the day, especially now that we lost it. You know, it's just such an amazing thing to be able to have personally. So anyway, The More We Live gets etched onto the Union album. Love Conquers All, which was another song we were working on, gets
I love that song.
Etched onto the Yes Years box set. So that's kind of my point of entry in terms of the recording side of things. They go out and do Union. I go to production. I produce Paul Rogers, Muddy Water Blues. I start producing other records, Motorhead, a bunch of other stuff. 1994, they're finishing the Talk record, and Trevor Rabin calls and says, how you doing? I said, good, what's up? And he says, well, we're going to tour Talk record, and we want to ask you out to come out as a multi-instrumentalist guy and play some bass too, if you know, if it's needed, you know, kind of thing. And I said, of course, yes, I'm down. Yeah. So that was my first point of entry with Yes on stage and touring. And to be honest, you know, up until that time, I was trying desperately to get my bands to the point of touring, but it just, because of regime change and circumstance, it never came.
Right.
So I went from 0 to light speed, because it was 5-star hotels and first class airfare, and it was like, wow, okay, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And we played amazing shows all over the place, and I was proud to be a part of it.
And I saw you at an amazing venue. How cool is it to play at the Greek? I saw you at the Greek on that tour.
Yeah, I mean, the Greek's great because that outdoor vibe, there's nothing like it, especially on a beautiful.
And it's a legendary place. You know, it's like the Bowl. It's like the Hollywood Bowl.
There's so many places like that. And since that was my first taste of playing those amazing places, you know, the one that sticks out to me was Madison Square Garden, with my grandmother in the audience, in between songs, just screaming, and from the, you know, wherever she was, it was like, that's her.
Right.
That was a very special memory. It was really cool. So I tour with the Talk record, and we, you know, it's no mystery Yes goes through phases, and those phases come with emotional stuff that goes on between band members. You cannot help it.
Right.
So things were not great on the road with the Talk band, the 90125 lineup, you know, and I was not in the band like legally as a member. I was a side band, but I was close enough to the flame to feel the heat, you know, and it was not always good.
If you don't mind me asking, was the biggest point of contention mainly between John and Trevor?
It's hard to say, but it just was collapsing, and you could feel it. You know, and it was not, bands, when they're not cohesive and it's not working between the brotherhood of musicianship and all that stuff, it's destined.
Yeah, it's like a marriage going bad. I've been through that. Yeah.
So we do that tour. There's vibes, blah, blah, blah. I get off the plane at LAX, and nobody's really talking to anybody as everyone's leaving. There's no real big goodbye, see you later, except for me, because they're all wishing me goodbye because I did my job, but I wasn't involved with all that. So I'm saying goodbye to everybody, but I'm watching the vibe still and then the next thing I know, they're broken up, and the classic lineup is reforming in San Luis Obispo,
Right.
where they make. Excuse me, I got allergies, and Santa Clarita is just rough. Where they make the Keys to Ascension 1 record, right?
Yeah.
And so Keys 1 is recorded and they're trying to mix it and it's not going quite the way they want. So I get a phone call from Chris. We're in a pinch. Can you mix this record?
It's going to be great.
And so at that point I'm cool because we've established the boundaries. I said, sure, man. So they come to my studio where I had a studio here in LA in Van Nuys for the longest time where I made a bunch of
The office.
Yeah. And I mixed Keys 1 and they're all very happy. And one thing leads to another. And I get a phone call from Chris. Hey, everybody dug your vibe, loved your work. Would you produce Keys 2? We're going to make a second follow-up. I said, sure. So they all come to my studio and we record Keys 2. And it's at that point, and this is where, the Yes community might have got a few things wrong because a lot of people think I came in and sort of, crushed that idea and took over with Open Your Eyes. But what happened was...
Really? People think that?
Yeah, as I was mixing Keys 2, I was sitting there with Chris and John. I'll never forget. John's on this couch in the back. And the phone rings and John grabs it and it's a phone call. And I can tell just from where I am looking over at him that he's kind of distressed. And so I stop the tape. He finishes his call. I said, what's up? He goes, well, Rick just quit. And that was Rick's how many times he's departed from Yes departure at that point. So he goes, finish the record and send me the mixes. And so John splits and I'm sitting there with Chris. And it's at that point where I've been around Yes long enough and I've seen enough heartbreak and whatnot. And it's still like, as it is, I sit here today, my favorite band ever. Yeah. I said to Chris, I cannot have Yes in my studio and it be the last thing that ever happens. It cannot end here. That's not cool.
Right. I get that.
We have to do something. And so I said, let's just start writing some things and see what happens. And let's just write. So Chris and I started writing and we came up with some cool things and started sending tapes around to John. And John wrote back, wow, this is cool. I want to sing on this. So he was in Hawaii. So John sings on it. He's done Wonder Love and Love Shine, a few other of those songs. Alan hears it and goes, wow, let me play on it. So Alan comes down and plays on it. And Steve, of course, gets involved and does his thing. And we have this record, but there's no record deal yet. And there's no manager because it's kind of floating in the abyss as far as like a band goes.
Yeah.
So Alan Kovacs gets involved, who is still is a huge mogul in the business and someone who I really admire and respect because he's a sharp character. And he signs the band and signs the record. The thing is, it's like, am I in this? Am I a friend? Am I the producer? What am I doing? So,
it kind of went unsaid at first, Billy.
Well, it was not known because you see, I'd played keys on a lot of it, but I'd also played some guitar because I'd written some of the things initially on guitar. Because as you said, I'm a multi-instrumentalist guy. If I'm feeling something on guitar, I'll start writing it on that. Yeah. So they said, well, no, you're going to be the keyboard player. And I said, I'm not a keyboard player. They said, well, you just did all these keys. I said, yeah, in the studio where I can punch stuff in, but like, I'm not Rick Wakeman level or, Mraz and TK. And
not even Billy Sherwood level.
I fake it in the studio and get the job done, but holding all that together live, that's not my forte. And a man's got to know his limitations, as Clint Eastwood once said. You know what I mean?
Smart, yeah.
So I said, I'm happy to come out and play rhythm guitar and be involved, but I'm not playing keys. And so at that point, they kind of said, well, you're too deeply embedded in this entire project to not be a part of it. So you're in the band. So now I'm officially a band member of Yes. And that leads to us needing the keyboard slot filled. And at that point, John Anderson reaches into his pouch of 4,000 cassettes from keyboard players who want to be the keyboard player at Yes. First one he pulls out is Igor Gohorshev, who was an extremely gifted keyboard player.
Yeah.
He came over to my studio and we sat there and we put on The Revealing Science of God, and he played through the whole thing. And so he got that gig. But he was kind of still in that sideman slot in terms of like he just got to the party. You know what I mean? I had served for quite a while before it moved up that level.
Yeah.
So that's how that thing evolved. And so we do the Open Your Eyes record and it does very, very well. And sold quite well and got us touring in big venues again. And we carry on and we do The Ladder. And Bruce Fairbairn produces that one because at that point the guys were like, look, you're in the band now, just we want you on this side of the glass when we're working, you know what I mean, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Producer band. So Bruce produced that record and we went out and toured that one. By the end of that record, you know, I could sense that they were feeling like they wanted to go back to the classic lineup again. It was just a feeling that I had in the same way that I knew to watch the train hit me about Union.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this thing was great. We did great work, but I can sense they want to go out and play close to the edge again as the classic lineup. So I split in 2000 and went into the world of jingles for a couple of years, where strangely, the guy who I worked for, his name was Jonathan Elias, produced half of the Union record.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we met.
Ah.
So right around 2000, I was in my hotel room and you know, after a gig, and I called Jonathan. I'm like, hey, can I come work for you? Kind of want to get back home and just stay home for a while. What do you think? So I worked at Elias Arts alongside Jimmy Hahn, who worked there, and my brother Mike, and a bunch of other great writer artists. I did that for about 2 years. And then I started really getting bored of working in 30-second chunks of music, and I wanted to get back to what I do. So I started producing records again and worked with countless people and did, as you know, many, many tributes that, you know, too many to mention. I've lost track. And kind of minding my own business, doing that. And as I'm doing those tribute records, I'm establishing connections with people because I'm hiring and working with so many amazing artists. Steve Hackett, Steve Morris, Steve Stevens, Steve Hillage, all the Steves were covered. All these amazing keyboard players, you know, Wakeman, Emerson, you know,
Steve Wakeman, Steve Emerson, Steve Shulman.
There. And so I had kind of connections with a lot of different artists that I was enjoying being able to work with. And that's why I kept pursuing that. And along that way, I made one record that was a tribute to The Wall. It was called Back Against the Wall.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it's at that point that I haven't talked to Tony in a while, but you know, TK is one of those guys in Yes that when we met, we bonded immediately, and you can't put light through there. It's just we've been buds forever and continue. I just saw him when he was at Rozfest. We went out and had dinner. We have our band Circa, as you know, and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's right around that period. I called Tony out of the blue. I say, Tony, how you been, man? And he's like, good. I said, you should play on this record I'm making. I've got all these other keyboard players, and you know, have you come in and do some stuff. And he says, oh man, I'm retired. I'm just playing tennis. I said, no, you're not. You're playing keyboards. I'm coming over. And so I kind of pushed him and pulled him out of that retirement mode that he thought he was in. And he played on the Wall tribute. And it was right there that I was like, you know what, man, me and you, we should do some writing just for fun. And so we wrote Brotherhood of Man, Cut the Ties, Information Overload, all these cool tracks. And Alan had played on the Wall record that I did. So when Alan was there, I'd already had all this material going. And I said, you want to hear some stuff I did with Tony Kaye? It's pretty cool. And I played him a few tracks, and Alan goes, I want to be involved.
Oh, wow. That's how that came about. That's great.
So Alan jumped in, and now it's just a matter of like, who's going to play guitar? And, you know, Jimmy Hahn and we've had a relationship through my whole life and continue to, because he's an arc of life, you know, still. And I said, I've got the guy. Jimmy's the perfect guy. So there is how Circa became Circa.
Wow.
And, you know, we go forward with Circa, and like Yes, Circa goes through its own revolving door of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jay Shellen joins after Alan leaves, because Yes kind of had a thing where John Anderson left and they got their first tribute singer and they needed to go do that. And Alan couldn't do us, so we got Jay. And then after Jay came Scott Connor, the drummer. After Jimmy left came Johnny Bruns. And then there was one album where I played drums. And then I decided that I wanted to play guitar, so I got Tierney to play bass and Scott Connor's on it. So it's had its own little, you know, spin cycle, if you will.
Yeah.
So those are those years pretty much. And there's a lot of production work that happens inside there too. But basically the reason why I'm shortening that period is because the next link to the Yes thing comes around, I don't remember if it was 2013 or 12, something around there. They're making the Heaven and Earth record. Mm-hmm. And Steve Howe calls me out of the blue. I haven't talked to Steve since I left the band, basically, you know, it's a long time. And he says, hey man, how are you? I said, good, it's nice to hear from you. What's going on? And he says, well,
it's going to be great.
He says, well, we're making this record and we want you to come get involved with the background vocal arrangements and sort of produce the backing vocals for us and get involved. And I said, I'd love to. So I went to the studio where they were recording and spent 10 days with Chris and John and Steve and myself. And we got this thing sorted out, which is all the vocals that you hear on the Heaven and Earth record.
So did you contribute some of those background vocals yourself as well? Or
yeah. I help arrange and, for lack of a better word, write a lot of the.
Harmonies and stuff.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is it's interesting for me in my career with Yes, because I've come across a few people, there's this, how the Yes community is. For the most part, it's very supportive, warm, and loving. And that's the part I love, because that's where I.
Yep, us too.
There are some people who are like, how did you get here and why are you still here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What am I?
Just ignore them.
And I've always said the same thing, which is true. Is like I never really pursued Yes. They always contacted me and kind of asked me something. And my loyalty to the band is such that it's like, when asked, I will serve, because that's just how I was band. So I finished the background vocals, and just as I just said, I'm kind of assuming, well, that was fun. That's it. I'll probably never hear from these guys again, or it's going to be a long time. I go home. Phone rings about a week later. It's like, hey, can you mix this for us? We have 10 days left and we need to get this mixed. And
of course.
And Squire was funny. He used to call me the fixer, like from Pulp Fiction. He's like, we need to fix this. So I mix Heaven and Earth, and, comes out, and they're now out on the road with John Davison, who I think has got just a wonderful voice. And when I was working with John at the studio, we became friendly instantly, because he's just such a cool dude. And we related on so many different levels. And that relationship started, and was just bonded right there too. So they went out and started playing live, and I get a call. Hey, we're making a live record. Can you mix it? Sure. Hey, we're making another live record. Can you mix it? Yeah. We're making another one. I mean, I don't remember how many I mixed before the transition, if you will, but it was quite a few. And so I'm in this loop now where I'm kind of mixing their records, but I'm in communication with them a lot more. And more importantly, Chris, it kind of reestablished our need to be talking to each other a lot more than you normally would, as, hey man, are you okay? Great. Talk to you soon. We're talking a lot. And so somewhere around 2015, they're getting ready to go out and tour with Toto. I forget what the dates were, but Chris calls me and says, so we're supposed to go out and do a tour with Toto, but I'm kind of sick. And I said, what do you mean kind of sick? Like, what kind of sick? He said, well, I got this thing that I got to have checked out. And, it's just going to take me out of the loop for a while. It's being kind of coy. And I said, well, you need to, do what you got to do to keep your health in order, obviously. So I guess you'll have to postpone the tour, because you can't tour Yes without you. You know what I mean? So tell the guys in the band you're going to need some time and get it done. He's like, yeah. All right, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow, like he always would. And 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from his wife, Scotty. And she says, he's not being honest with you in terms of what's going on here. And I need to tell you. I just didn't want to tell you, but you need to know. He's got this real serious case of leukemia, and it's coming on strong, and he's in trouble. Now, which that just set me back. It was like the most mind-blowing phone call I've had since your dad just died, which was, back when I was a kid. Chris was that figure for me of like, not like a father, but like an older brother to me.
Right.
And so I'm kind of blown away. And so the next day, Chris calls and he goes, so she told you what's going on? And I said, yeah, man. But look, I know people personally who have had this, and have beaten it. It's not easy, but they beat it. So you'll be fine. You know what I mean? You get in the hospital and you get the treatments that you need, and you'll be fine. He's like, yeah. He goes, I'm just kind of bummed out, that Yes can't do this tour, because there's so much responsibility on the line in terms, this is where his head was at as he's just being diagnosed with this thing. He's thinking the crew and their family, they're not going to have an income. The guys Toto had this plan. He's kind of thinking of everybody else. I brought him back to the center and said, look, you need to get in there and get healed. So you need to tell the band they're going to have to wait. And he goes, yeah, I'll do that. I'll talk to you tomorrow. So he calls me the next day when he says, again, I just, I'm so bummed that this thing has to stop, because, I said, Chris, did you call them? And he goes, well, not yet. I'm like, oh, do me a favor. When you hang up with me, call them and tell them. He goes, yeah. So calls me the next day. Same thing. I'm just so bummed that, I said, Chris, did you call him? He goes, you're not getting it, are you? And I said, getting what? And he goes, I want you to step in for me and do this. And I want it to happen. And I said, no, I did not get that. Because to be honest with you, as many ways as I've ended up in Yes, which are unique. I mean, I'm playing Shaker and the Talk Tour at some points, I never expected to replace Chris Squire. It was never, ever. Chris going to be the last man standing like Keith Richards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never occurred to me. So
how'd you digest that?
Well, that kind of blew my mind for a minute, and it was pretty emotional. And, I kind of lost it a little bit. And, I'm hearing my hero asking me to do this, which is an amazing honor. But by the same token, why is he asking me? Because he's in some deep trouble here. It was just, it was reality on a level that I wasn't used to. And it was hard. Really
and
hard.
Was it a unexpected? I mean, obviously for probably obvious reasons, it was welcome. But at the same time, was it as much of a burden to fill that role? and
Well,
live up to expectations, just all the things I don't even need to say. You know what I mean?
intimidating as hell, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, on face. But there's no way I was going to deny him this wish.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I will do this. But I need you to go out and make a statement that we are going to do this. And I need you to tell people you're going to come back, because you are going to come back. Okay. So I'm standing in for you. I'm not replacing you. And he's like, yeah, I will do that. I will do that. So he put out a press statement that went out to the public and said something to that effect. So now I'm rehearsing and I'm at home and he's calling me every day. How's it going? I'm like, it's weird, but it's good. How are you? You know what I mean? Are you okay? I am dealing with the treatments and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, he's like, do you need anything? I said, not really. And he says, I said, there's something that's kind of on my mind. I want to run by you. And, how do you feel about this? But I said, Chris, I've never played a Rickenbacker. It's just never been my thing ergonomically. He goes, don't even consider it. That would be ridiculous if you did that. Don't even worry about it. You have your own thing. That's why I want you to do this. You have your own thing. So play the instruments you want to. I said, great, because I know that's going to be coming at me right out of the gate. Why isn't he standing there already?
Right.
If I have your personal endorsement on it being without it, it's okay. I feel better about things already,
Yeah.
So I start rehearsing, and as I'm at home shedding, and this is a real compressed period of time. This isn't a lot of time. He keeps calling, and then conversations are turning to like, I'm not going to make it. He says, and I said, Chris, I don't really want to hear. Don't give up this fight. I've known people who've survived this. You are going to make it. No, man, I don't think I'm going to make it, And I was like, this is hard to hear and I don't want to hear it. Just keep yourself positive, and we talk about anything else. And then the next day he called and he goes, I'm telling you, I'm not going to make it, and I need you to accept that, and I need you to hear something. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, I want Yes to continue. I want you to go for it. And there were other things said that are kind of personal, but you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And his, in this, which was mind blowing again, because in this moment of extreme grief and I'm sure terror in his heart, because he's facing what he was facing, he still thinks about Yes, and this idea of Yes, and that he was all about that and wanted it to continue. How many icons, pass the keys over to someone else and say, keep this car going. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was just an intense period, and I was trying to process it as best I could and sort of maintain. And he's like, so, promise me you're going to keep doing this. And I said, yes, and I promise you, but you are coming back. But, I promise you if it makes you feel better, but you're coming back. You know what I mean? Then I didn't really get any more phone calls, and it was about 3 days or so, 4 days. And I knew something had taken the turn. And this cloudy Sunday morning, I get up and go take a walk out in the back of my place where I lived at the time. I had the wide open desert spaces behind me, and I would go out there and take a walk. It's like 6 a.m. I'm watching the sun come up. Come back, grab my bass to start playing some of the Yes stuff that we're about to go out and do really quickly after, a week or two, whatever it was. And I open my email to check things, and I just see a message from the management that says Chris. And I knew what it was. And I sat there and, sorry.
It's
very heavy, understandable.
I couldn't open it. So after time, I opened it, and life is the way it is when we lose people. So from that moment forward, I just took it as a personal mission to keep this thing going.
Right.
Yeah.
And it bothers me when I hear people tell me to stop.
Sure. Yeah.
And, it makes me more defiant and dig my heels in and want to keep it going.
Yeah.
And yet I think it's known out there in the community that that's how I am and that's how I react. And, I don't interact with the people on Facebook when they start getting into tangles over this, that, and the other, But when I see it and it's coming directly at me, and or I see someone saying they should have stopped when Chris Squire died, it pisses me off because of what I just told you was in Chris's heart.
Yeah.
They don't do that, so I understand that and kind of give them a little room. But if they carry on, sometimes I just go in and explain to them what the reality of the situation is. So here we are.
I'm hoping, I just want to say, I'm hoping that there's people like that out there that will see this and can learn a little bit more and be a little more sensitive and understanding, whether they like it or not, they can have a different perspective of it. And to me, I think that's important. There's people out there that say yes isn't yes without Patrick Moraz. There's everybody. There's every fucking story and every perspective we could possibly imagine. Yeah. And I'm hoping that your story of what really happened and how it happened will kind of enlighten some people and also get them to lighten up.
Yeah. Well, and my theory too is that those who believe in yes want it to go forward. And those are the people that I'm doing it for. And those are the people Chris talked about doing it for.
Yeah. And you're doing a great job, by the way. You have in all these different roles. And I'm not kissing ass. How many times did I tell you since 1998 when we first met how much I just loved Fortune Seller and the production of that whole album? I've been on your ass about that stuff for how long's it been? 30 years or whatever. What year is this? I don't even know anymore. But
well, I mean, I'm doing the best I can. I feel better about the work that I'm doing now. I was when I did that first tour after Chris passed and we were playing live, it was very difficult, going out there and playing and looking out at an audience that I knew was looking at an absence and a change. And it was like, I said to the band, if this doesn't work, this is all going to be my fault. So I'm going to do the best I can here and try to make this work. And I think the fans, were such an important component of me wanting to carry on and also giving me that strength to find that defiance to keep going, because of their warmth and the way that they embraced me. But I also think that comes from the fact that they, I wasn't a stranger to a lot of these people. And they also knew my relationship with Chris in Yes, in Conspiracy, in life. So it kind of made sense to a lot of people. But the fans definitely made it easier. And, that first tour was really rough. Things got a little bit easier after that. But now there's a lot of time that's passed and I'm comfortable in the role. And I played actually as the bass player of Yes on a studio album, and we're working on another one.
Yeah.
And so my imprint is being embedded into the legacy in that way. And, we go forward and I have to go forward being me, but honoring Chris as best I can, which is what I try to do every time I play one of his things, and I will play various things of his that have me laughing on stage because I remember how he would laugh when he'd play it. And then there's other moments that I'll play a particular passage and out of the blue, it just strikes me and I just have to put my head down because I'm just totally sad about that he's not here because this is such a beautiful thing he wrote here and he should be playing it, so life is not fair in that way. I mean, I lost my brother in November of 19 and, he died way too young and so did Chris. And these things are just part of life and they give you the wisdom and, hopefully you find the strength to figure forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
It's almost 8 years later now that I've been doing this, which is shocking, but
most bands don't even last 8 years. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, the last 3 have been completely stolen by this COVID thing. But it's still the time card's still being punched.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember or saw it. I think I sent it to you. We did a special, Stephen and I, on Michael on his birthday.
Oh wow, that's sweet.
Yeah. And I remember this is around the time Steve was born because I remember where I was living in Ventura, and I had reached out to you and invited you to go. I don't know if you remember this. I invited you to go with me down to San Diego to see Roger Waters. And you weren't available, but you said, you know what, maybe my brother Michael would want to go. Do you want his phone number?
Oh.
And I called Michael and he appreciated, but wasn't available. But we got to talk a bit and everything. I ended up taking my mother. I took my mom, lived in West Hills. I was in Ventura. We drove down to San Diego, my mom pumping her fist to Roger Waters. And on the way back, we're on the 405. And she says to me, and it's like 1 a.m. or 2, whatever. And she says, Danny, are you speeding? I look down, I go, I'm like 5 over. She says, what's with all the cops? And I look in the mirror and it's nothing but blue and red across all lanes of the 405 going north. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll slow down and start to pull over. And as I did, they all got off and I realized, wait a minute, Staples Center, the Lakers just won the championship. People are freaking out. And that's what that was. Wow. So that all, like when I think of Michael, I think of all that. It's so weird. Thank you for sharing all that. I know that was hard.
And I'd also like to read 3 comments we have before we sort of wind down with a couple other questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
So Christina from earlier said, I've been a Yes fan for 30 years and you have always been a welcome addition to Yes.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you very much.
She loves your work on Close to the Edge. No, just kidding.
And
I actually had a guy to meet and greet once say that to me. He goes, I love your work on Close to the Edge. I said, no, I wasn't on Close to the Edge. But, yeah, you were. I said, yeah, I was.
I mean, what's funny is this other comment.
Oh, what are you, like 7 when that came out?
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I
Kevin.
was on a big wheel when they were working on it.
Yeah, Kevin McKivergan says, "Has anyone ever told you that you and Chris sound alike vocally?" And he also says, "Amazing Billy, respect." And Milk Sarat says, "Saw Billy with Yes early 2000, badass." So, like, high praise right there.
Yeah, your voices went so well together, really.
Well, yeah, Chris and I,
The timbre.
probably because I sort of sang along with Fish Out of Water so many times trying to get that phrasing, probably I sort of morphed into some of that quality. And admittedly, I know I can do a pretty good Chris if I'm in the studio, you know what I mean?
I'm sure, yeah.
But it's funny because a lot of people when I was younger said I sounded like John Anderson.
Interesting.
Of course, I'm a lot older now, and I don't sing as high as I once did when I was 20. But back in the day, it was always like, wow, you sound like John. I always used to get John Anderson, a mixture of John, Sting, and Chris. So we joke in Logic that I was John Anderson.
That's funny. When the Police first came out, the first thing I thought of was that guy is trying to sound just like Chris Squire.
Exactly.
And he still does.
That's why I dug it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a part of it. But yeah, Chris and I kind of had that same timbre, and we knew it too as we were working together.
Yeah.
That was a thing we could work on. And I had the same thing with Mike, obviously, but that was more genetic. It was just, kinds of ways he phrases vowels and syllables. I was sort of into that same mode, and I've never sung with a fake English accent, but it just starts getting into that shape.
The enunciation and everything.
Yeah, it's the feeling in that shape,
Yeah. Before we go into a very quick rapid fire of fun fact questions for you, we'll be real quick with that. Can you tell us anything about the new album?
I really can't, because Steve's produced, and you would be getting me into a lot of trouble.
That's okay. Will you keep us in mind for when you can?
I have a great relationship with Steve, so I'm not going to do anything jeopardizing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I was also
Totally
wondering, and like, I don't know if you're allowed to say anything, but I was also wondering, like, how much of the quest we might expect on any of these upcoming tours. But again, I don't know, like, how much you're allowed to say, which is totally fine.
That's the other thing is, Steve's very precious about the set list and keeping it as top secret as possible in a world where leave is inevitable. So I don't want to be the source of that. We're at a band meeting. Hey.
After the first show, it's like the whole world knows.
Yeah.
But cool. So let's go into Steve's going to kick off rapid fire fun fact questions, and then I'll tie it all up. And folks, thanks for watching. And thank you again, Billy. So Steve, it's all yours. When you're done, I'll add a couple and we're out.
Okay. All right. So what is your favorite Seinfeld episode?
Oh my God. Kramer getting the lattes for the rest of it. And the last scene where he's at the door explaining to the guy, just I can relate to that. You know what I mean? I'm a huge, as you see, as like I got my triple venti.
Right.
Nice. I could relate totally to his Coffee Jones.
Cool.
Yeah. And who is your favorite Curb Your Enthusiasm side character?
What is his roommate's name?
Leon. Yeah, Leon. Yeah. I was about to say the name of his character from a different show, but yeah, you got it.
Leon is the best. I mean, the funniest things that he says I can't repeat here to the general public.
I mean, he does feel like the Kramer of Curb, weirdly.
Yeah, he is, but it's Curb is like Seinfeld X-rated.
Yeah,
but Leon
uncensored. I
love Leon. He's one of my favorite characters.
That's great. Yeah. You have more, Steve?
No. Go ahead with yours.
I got a few. Billy, I gotta ask, by any chance, are you in a white car?
I am not, but you can see I'm surrounded by the
light,
the glow.
That's Chris.
I'm a man in a glowing white car.
Great. You've been all over the world. What's a destination other than my house up in Globe, Arizona? What's a destination you've never been to that you would love to go to, and why?
Wow. Well, maybe Israel, at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Go see the history of it all and the view of it all. And I've never made it over there. It's kind of it's like obviously at times a global hotspot. So
that's why I've never made it there.
Not one of our stops. I wish it kind of was.
Yeah.
Not. So yeah, Israel would probably
Cool.
be it. My phone just told me I've got 10% left here.
Okay. And where do you have on your itinerary when you tour that when you see it, you look forward to it because of the food?
That's an interesting question. Well, New York is always great, because there's just so many amazing places there. And actually, Argentina for the mix down there, and Brazil for those. I don't even want to say the word because I'm going to get it so wrong. But there's places where you go in and they slice off all the beef at your table.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Over.
Oh, there was a place in Henderson my dad and I went to once on North Horizon Ridge Parkway where I lived. I can't think of the name of the restaurant, but that was amazing. That was great.
Really good.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
those kind of destinations I like. Well, of course, Japan because it's authentic over there.
Yeah, best food I've ever had, definitely. What would be a Yes song that you've never played on stage with Yes that you'd love to play, other than Mood for a Day?
The more we live, now that we've discussed it.
What's that?
Maybe the more we live. Now that
that would be amazing.
Yeah. That'd be a great homage to Chris as well.
Yeah, it would indeed.
Yeah, great. Favorite movie?
Well, in a pinch, it's always the first Star Wars, but I have so many favorite movies. I'm a huge sci-fi freak. To me, sci-fi is like the visual version of progressive rock music. It's it's just a place to experiment and let go. So I have so many favorite movies that I could watch, and I do. I sit on the couch and if the Fifth Element starts, I'll bet it off till it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Great. Last question. When you're not doing anything related to music or work, what do you like to do? Do you have a hobby? Do you collect anything or?
Oculus Quest 2.
Really?
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I go into VR and I've got some of my favorite games in there. And I've been a video gamer my whole life. I started at Pong, shoving quarters into the Pong.
Yeah.
So I've been with the evolution of that media for.
I go back to pachinko machines.
And so I've watched the evolution of how things evolved into, when I had my first Tandy TRS-80 and played on there to, Nintendo to Xbox. And so finally we've got it where you put it on and you're in this world and you're 3D and you're interacting with other people who are standing there next to you with their avatars. And I don't know, when I'm not working on music, I like to go in there and just detach and not hear music because I do work on music much, you know what I mean? So I love VR world.
Nice. Billy, thank you so much again for not only joining us, but unfolding all that, unpacking all that, some really deep personal things. We really appreciate it. And folks, thank you for following what we do. If you're watching the archive, go ahead and comment. If you're listening to us at anchor.fm/YesShift, go ahead and share the podcast around. And folks, you can write us, love mail, hate mail, suggestions, anything at YesShiftPodcast@gmail.com. And Billy, hang on the line after we disconnect from the live stream.
Will do.
Great, thanks. Steve, thanks for joining us, Billy and I.
It was a great time, just all of it. Yeah, thanks again, Billy. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody out there for this constant support. And it's very much felt and appreciated here. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for carrying the torch.
Yeah, man. Honored.
Bye, everybody.